Good afternoon, everybody. Today is June 22nd, 2021. Summer is cruising right along, and I will start or call to order the Environment Committee. First item is to read the executive order statement, and that is that Governor Walz has declared a peacetime emergency. It's Emergency Executive Order 20-01 in response to COVID-19. And the Met Council chair has determined it is not practical or prudent to conduct an in-person meeting for reasons stated in the governor's emergency executive order. Accordingly, committee members will participate in this meeting via telephone or other electronic means, and the meeting will be conducted under Minnesota statutes section 13D.021.
So Chair Lindstrom,
yeah,
before we move on, we should do a roll call for attendance.
Let's do that.
Okay. Wanted to acknowledge, I do not, Councilmember Fredson.
Good afternoon.
Joined. Are you with us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sterner?
Here.
Vento?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
Zarin?
Present.
Thank you. And Lindstrom?
Still here.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for that friendly reminder. So without objection, the agenda for this afternoon is approved. And we have some minutes to approve as well from June 8th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Vento moves approval.
And a second?
Wolf seconds.
Excellent. Roll call, please.
Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Acknowledging Wolf said aye. Zarin?
Aye.
And Lindstrom?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Two items on our consent agenda this afternoon, two comp plans and comprehensive sewer plans, one from City of Mendota Heights and one from City of Elko New Market. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? And a second?
Wolf moves the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second by Sterner.
Excellent. Roll call.
Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Zarin?
Aye.
Acknowledging Zarin said aye. And Lindstrom?
Aye.
Thank you.
You betcha. Two items on our non-consent agenda as well. The first one's involving master contracts for wastewater treatment plant treatment process consultation and support. Miss Manning.
Yes. Thank
Welcome.
you. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present business item 2021-155, master contracts for wastewater treatment plant treatment process consultation and support. It's contract 20P259. Next slide, please. This contract would address needs identified by the Wastewater Planning and Capital Projects Delivery Group, namely engineering consultation and support for traditional, new, and/or complex wastewater treatment issues, such as chloride management, per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, nutrient reduction, wastewater and stormwater reuse, resource recovery, and sustainable management of residuals. Two proposed master contracts of $300,000 each will provide the contract capacity needed to provide wastewater treatment process consultation and support. Next slide, please. These contracts will enable MCS to obtain the engineering consultation and support for a number of treatment issues identified in the contract scope and shown here on the slide. And I've mentioned a few of them, but I'll point to the list again. Some things such as nutrient reduction processes, anaerobic digestion, pathogen reduction, metal source reduction and removal processes, solids thermal conditioning processes, high strength waste energy processes, and as I mentioned, sustainable management of residuals. Those were scope items in the RFP treatment issues. Next slide, please. The scope also laid out engineering services that may be provided under these contracts, such as technical consultations, wastewater system and treatment plant process planning, process performance evaluations, feasibility studies, engineering alternatives development and evaluations, communication plans and presentation assistance, and assistance to MCS for participating in research foundation projects about new technology or processes. Since these are master contracts, those engineering services may or may not be called for. They would be authorized through work authorizations. Next slide, please. Summarizing the contract procurement process, 11 proposals were received and evaluated. The request for proposals anticipated one or more contracts. OEO did not set a goal for disadvantaged business enterprise participation, and an evaluation panel of MCS staff ranked proposals by demonstrated best overall value to the council. The recommended award and contract value is for Short Elliott Hendrickson, or SVH, $300,000, and for HDR Engineering, $300,000. Next slide, please. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to negotiate and execute 2 master contracts, each for an amount not to exceed $300,000 with Short Elliott Hendrickson and HDR Engineering. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to respond to comments or questions.
Any comments or questions for Ms. Manning? Or I certainly would entertain a motion.
Wolf moves approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Fredson, I'll second.
Excellent. Roll call.
Fredson,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zarin,
Aye.
and Lindstrom.
Aye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Manning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. That takes us to our second item, a big project in the Osseo Brooklyn Park region, interceptor rehab project. Mr. Wadeen, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's nice to be back. So I'm here to present to you this evening on business item 2021-156, the Brooklyn Park Osseo Interceptor Rehabilitation Project, 809-361, contract number 20P233. Next slide, please. Project is located in the city of Brooklyn Park and the city of Osseo, fairly close to the intersection of Highway 169 and County Road 81, or Bottineau Boulevard. The pipe in the Brooklyn Park area, shown on the lower portion there, lower highlighted portion near the M224 indicator, is along 85th Avenue North and is going to be rehabilitated using cured in-place pipe liner. The pipe in this area is about 50 feet deep in some locations. Manholes will be rehabilitated using fiberglass reinforced plastic inserts, FRP panels, or corrosion-resistant coating. We will also be rehabilitating meter structure M224 and replacing the flume, which measures flow through that structure. Finally, we'll also be relocating the bioxide tank that is located next to meter 224. It's part of the odor control system in that area. We'll be relocating that to a new site on 83rd Avenue North. The pipe on the Osseo portion of the project is along County Road 81. It will also be an open cut for the existing 12-inch pipe. We'll be upsizing this to a 15-inch pipe. We'll be replacing all the manholes along that line with new manholes. We'll also be working with Hennepin County to construct a trail along the project route using a construction cooperative agreement. Next slide, please. Some photos of the inside of our pipe and the meter structure. You can see on the upper left-hand corner the partial flume and the radar sensor that is hanging over the partial flume that measures flow through there and determines our flow rates. The other three pictures are from our CCTV on the right, our televising program that shows the inside of the pipes of what we're repairing. As well as some entry on that lower left-hand corner. We went in and took a look at some of the concrete in that area. It is in poor shape, and we really do need to get in and line this pipe with this part of the project. Next slide, please. Probably the biggest impact for this project will be the temporary conveyance pipe that will be installed. We'll be installing temporary conveyance pipe along Jefferson Highway North and County Road 81 along the road right-of-way. Will also be some lane closure during the project and temporary road closures during the installation of the temporary conveyance pipe. The image on the upper right-hand corner shows our proposed routing for the temporary conveyance. It is a long route and really trying to make sure that we're taking care of flows that are entering our system from both cities. Next slide, please. 3 bids were received on this project that ranged from $3,939,180 to $4,822,108.76. The lowest bid was received from Menger Construction Company. Metropolitan Council underutilized business goal of 10% has been met per the Office of Equal Opportunities Review. Next slide, please. So our proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to award and execute contract 20P233 with Menger Construction Company Incorporated for rehabilitation or replacement of interceptor pipe in Brooklyn Park and Osseo in an amount not to exceed $3,939,180. Next slide. With that, I'm available for questions.
Good, thank you, Tim. I have a question off the question on the 10% MCUB goal. Do you know what companies have been hired, subcontracted with to meet that goal, or generally what their role is in this project? If you don't know the exact name of the company.
Yeah, I do not know the exact name of the company or the role. I'm trying to think, and maybe Janine can help me out here as far as who might, or Jody might be able to help me out here as far as who we might be seeing as MCUB participants. I don't know that I have seen a list of who the sub-consultants are on this project, since we have not awarded the project to the contractor yet.
Mr. Chair and committee members, I believe that I can answer the question as it relates to the subcontractors used to total the 10% approval from the Office of Equal Opportunity. They are as follows: Husky Construction for erosion control, C. Olson Concrete for concrete, Boys Water Products, which is pipe fitting and a supplier, Safety Signs for traffic control.
Exactly what I was looking for. You were Johnny on the spot right there. Thank you so much. Councilmember Sterner.
I just had a question or clarification, and maybe it's already came up, but I know we can use subcontractors for the MCUP goal. Can we also use the manufacturers of the products that we're installing to go against MCUP goals?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I have an answer to that question either. Perhaps Robert, do you know, can we use suppliers as a part of the MCUP goal? I believe we can.
I believe so as well, but I think the question would be best suited to for response by the Office of Equal Opportunity.
Mr. Chair, council members, I can certainly answer that question. I'm Elaine Ogilvie. I'm the supervisor of the Council of Small Business Programs. And yes, absolutely. If there's an MCUB available that provides the products that the contractor is using, they can certainly use an MCUB for those products if they choose to.
Great. Appreciate the answer.
Other questions or comments? Is that Councilmember Zirin?
Yes,
Please go ahead.
Chair Lindstrom. I just have a question. How do you do temporary conveyance over a railroad track? I just noticed the map has a railroad track on it, and we're temporarily conveying over it. Roadway, dig trench, put the kids in the roadway, cover it back over a temporary road. What about
Ray, you're coming in and out. We just lost you, but Tim, I don't know if you caught enough of it to get the gist of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I think I caught the gist of that. What I heard was Councilmember Zarin was reviewing the image and noticed that the project will impact a railroad track, or we will be crossing a railroad track. We do have a license agreement with the railroad company in the area. As I recall, in this instance, it is Burlington Northern Santa Fe, where we will be constructing essentially a tunnel or jacking a casing, a steel casing underneath the railroad in order to place our pipe. So we are working with the railroad in order to make that construction.
Excellent.
And Chair Lindstrom?
Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm the question was, how do we do conveyance over a railroad track? So Mr. Wadeen, you did respond to the question, and Councilmember Zarin said thank you.
Other questions on this project? Seeing none, is there a motion to move forward?
Brett and I would move the staff recommendation.
Wolf seconds.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Zarin?
Aye.
And Lindstrom?
Zarin's aye.
Thank you. And Lindstrom?
Aye for me as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and thanks to staff for jumping in and answering those questions. That takes us to our information item where we're sort of sticking on the same theme of procurement and how it all works. Ms. Jacoby is here along with Mr. Carey and Ms. Ogilvie.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the director of the procurement department. And I'm really excited to be with you today. And with me in this presentation is Robert Carey, who is the contracts manager in procurement, and also Elaine Ogilvie, who is the small business supervisor in the Office of Equal Opportunity. And this information item today is really intended to help you understand the standard procurement process for construction projects. you see these projects at the final stage of execution and approval before the contract is sent out to the contractor. And today's meeting, right before this presentation, had a really great conversation about a construction project for the Brooklyn Park Osseo Interceptor Rehab Project, which was presented by Mr. Wadeen. And so really good framework to set for this conversation. And this presentation has two parts to it. The first part is to provide a foundation to help again understand the standard procurement process for construction projects, starting at a project initiation all the way to a contract execution. And then the second part is to illustrate a case study of a recent construction project to show you actual milestones achieved, the schedule, and other factors to put it into perspective. Next slide, please. The first stage is really to show the pre-solicitation and the steps that occur before the project is actually handed off or assigned to procurement. There's certainly a lot of work that happens through this initiation. And the initiation starts with a contract initiation memo, otherwise known as a SIM. This is required in Council Procedure 14-2A for delegation of procurement and contract authority, which basically says any expenditure anticipated to be greater than $50,000 needs to have both the project and the budget approved. And the process is pretty simple, where it's initiated by the project manager, approved by the manager, and then routed to different business units within the council, like finance. Ned Smith and his team will review it. The Office of Equal Opportunity gets an opportunity to look at the project, and an intake memo is completed, and I'll have Elaine talk about that. But it's routed to all the different parties. And then when that SIM is executed, then procurement has the authority to work on it based again on an approved project and a budget. There's a fairly recent process for looking at each project and determining specific goals or targets with the number of subcontracting opportunities. And I'll have Elaine Ogilvie speak to the intake form and some of the recent changes that have happened.
Sorry, Jody. Trying to find my unmute button. How often does that happen? Even today. Thank you, Jody, council members, Mr. Chair. Yes, as Jody mentioned, we have the new intake form. The intake form is part of the SIM process. It is a form that has approximately about 8 questions that really ask the project manager very specific details about the project. So we have detailed information by the time it gets to our specialists, so that we can take a look at it and better understand what the project is and what the scopes are when we start our assessment for the MCUB goal process, or DBE goal as well.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair and committee members, so after the Office of Equal Opportunity looks at the project in totality, and we had a real life example where you were asking some questions about the recent construction project. After we have all of that detail and an understanding, again, of the project, the budget, and what goals are going to be set, then procurement is authorized to work on it. Someone in procurement is assigned at Robert Carey's team, and they start the engagement with the project manager to have a high level overview of the expectations, the responsibilities, and then the procurement action lead time for every milestone. There's also a solicitation package, planning package that's developed that looks at, again, any unique requirements by the funding source, the targeted goals that are set, specific requirements for insurance and bonding, looking at liquidated damages, any property easements or right-of-way acquisitions that need to be considered, any special equity considerations, and then looking at the appropriate contract type. So the project manager and the procurement consultant will build the solicitation document and review it and then start their outreach with particular contractors who are going to be bidding on the project and looking at specific engagement of our targeted vendors as well. Next slide, please. This slide, I'm going to transition it to Robert Carey, who will discuss the solicitation and the post-bid process steps.
Thank you, Jody. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. And as Jody mentioned, my name is Robert Carey. I'm the contracts manager for our procurement department. Jody and Elaine have discussed the efforts that go into some of the pre-solicitation process steps and planning. And I'll talk a little bit about the steps that we go through for the time of advertisement to the submission of the bids, and then the evaluation of those bids by both procurement and the Office of Equal Opportunity. So Jody was just mentioning the outreach and ensuring that our targeted vendors are aware of the opportunity. We ensure through the advertisement process that we not only post the council's contracting opportunities page, we provide a link to any of the bidding documents that is included in a third-party advertising platform called Quest CDN. And that portal is kind of specifically structured to support major construction projects. We'll also advertise in other locations for additional outreach. And sometimes that may include use of other partners and their advertisement portals to ensure that that additional engagement and outreach efforts to meet those targeted businesses is included. Next, we go through a pre-bid meeting. This is a standard process for all major construction solicitations that's hosted by council staff. During this meeting, we outline the solicitation requirements, equity requirements, and we discuss the project specifications, and we respond to plan holder inquiries. This is the only time before the bids are due that the market and the project sponsor and council team will be in the same room, so to speak. We are currently conducting these meetings remote through Teams, but typically they were hosted in person. Following the pre-bid meeting is a window for written submissions to be submitted for any questions that either aren't directed or answered during the pre-bid meeting or that come in post-meeting. And what we do is we put together an addendum that will respond to those questions. And these are the addendum and the response to any questions. They can change the solicitation requirements. So if there's an update to the specifications or the drawings, we'll work with the project manager and the consultant that put together those drawings. And then we address those modifications to that solicitation through Quest CDN. And all registered plan holders within Quest CDN are alerted at the same time of any updates or publications to that project page. Once we've answered all of the questions and we're moving into waiting for bids to be received, the next step is for us to do a public bid opening. And during that, we include a reader and a witness, and we open bids that indicate the bid totals. And then we post that bid summary again to Quest CDN to all registered plan holders. After the bids are opened, both procurement and the Office of Equal Opportunity have a role in the process of evaluation. Procurement's role will evaluate the bid responsiveness as it pertains to the required submittals against the instructions and will determine an apparent low responsive bidder. Now, if there is a DBE or an MCUB goal, the apparent low bidders' submittal of their DBE or MCUB forms is routed to the Office of Equal Opportunity to evaluate the commitment and good faith efforts against the contractor solicitation requirement. And I'll hand over the next slide to Elaine to discuss that in greater detail.
Thanks, Rob. As Rob mentioned, we do have a part in this process, and it starts with reviewing what the bidder has committed to in terms of their utilization for MCUB firms. We look at the numeric calculation on the form. We make sure that the firms that they've listed are certified in the applicable program, whether it be MCUB or DBE. And then we make sure that the firms that they've committed to do actually indeed provide the product or service that the prime contractor is intending to utilize them for credit. If the bidder met the goal numerically, then procurement moves forward on their award process. If the bidder did not meet the goal numerically, then my team reviews the bidder's documented good faith efforts. Now, good faith efforts documentation is required at time of bid as a matter of responsiveness if they did not meet the goal. And there are, the good faith efforts is basically the documented steps that the bidder took to achieve the goal, even if they weren't successful. So even if they didn't meet the goal, these are the documented efforts that they would submit, telling us what they did to try to meet that goal.
Next slide, please. Well, thank you, Elaine. So now that the bids have been evaluated for their responsiveness to the solicitation requirements, we're going to discuss briefly the post-bid and pre-award process steps. So the next step in the process is to determine responsibility. And this is essentially translated by, can the vendor do the work that they are bidding against? We have a couple mechanisms that we use to ensure that through the system of award management and the state of Minnesota debarred list, just to make sure that there is no use of a debarred or suspended vendor. And we'll look at previous experience with the bidder if we have that. Once procurement staff have determined the responsiveness and the responsibility of the low bidder, we can get into the recommendation for award. And we do that through a request for action. That can occur in two different ways. One is if the value exceeds a $2.5 million threshold, which requires council action, and anything under $2.5 million, the delegated authority for that value is our regional administrator. And so we can process the request for action either directly through SharePoint to our regional administrator. And of course, you know that the business items, as you've seen today, are presented to committee and council for those that are over the 2.5 million threshold. And then after we get the approval or the authorization to award the contract, we do as such, and we notify all plan holders of the council's intent to award the project to the low responsive responsible bidder. And again, that's communication that's posted on Quest CDN. Next slide, please.
Now we're at the point of, next slide, please, the project closeout process. There it is. Thank you. Where the contract handoff is happening. And this is a quick meeting between the procurement contact who facilitated the procurement and the project manager to go over high-level contract management and expectations about insurance, if there's any additional bonds that need to be collected, goals to be monitored. There's a lot of lingering things with the contract management that procurement just does a high level review to hand it off to the project manager to actually manage the contract. And then there's the procurement reporting. Some of these files include checklists of up to 52 different items, depending on the funding source and the complexity of the project. And then there's the project closeout and all the documentation that needs to be maintained with the file. And so we've gone through, again, just a real high level framework of the typical process. And you've probably heard it and seen some of these buzzwords in the business item. They really are pillars in the procurement process, such as the term Rob used with plan holders. I know there's been a lot of questions on that. That's the number of vendors that actually download our projects, the standard pre-bid meeting, the standard bid opening, the good faith effort, and then the terms responsive and responsibility. Next, I'll turn it back to Rob, and he will go through a case study of an actual project, a recent project, to show, again, those high-level pillars and some of the milestones that were actually achieved to put this standard practice into application. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jody. So you have an understanding of the procurement and OEO process steps at a high level. This case study just gives you a snapshot of how the steps align with the timing and some of the lead times that are agreed upon between business units such as environmental services and procurement. And actually, we're using a project from the environmental service group. So this will showcase how these milestones are met. And what we call the procurement action lead time for this project, next slide please, was indicated at 120 days. And so that is the belief by both procurement and the business unit that the project timeline can be met within this lead time. So you'll see just high level here, you initiate the SIM, you get approval of the funding, you get a goal assigned by the Office of Equal Opportunity, and then you get your final approvals of the SIM and the assignment to the contract administrator. Next slide. Okay, so now that you have the assignment, we kind of enter into the pre-solicitation phase. And as you can see here, the noted number of days that this would occur in was 119 days or 120 days. This occurred in 119 days. So the next slides will showcase again how the timing met against that milestones that were generated. The front-end construction request was completed and submitted. The project manager provided any additional technical specifications and drawings. This is that collaboration that Jody talked about in a previous slide between key stakeholders. So the consultants, the project managers, and the procurement representatives are all collaborating to ensure that we have an accurate ask within the solicitation to meet our needs. And then once that's completed, we advertise. And in this case, you can see that as we discussed previously, sometimes we'll utilize other partners and parties to advertise. And in this case, we use the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency as well as the council and QuestCDN. Next slide. So now the invitation for bids is advertised. You can see that it's advertised from the October 14th to December 3rd. A pre-bid meeting was held on October 19th. Of note, during the COVID restrictions, all pre-bid and bid openings have been conducted remote. So this occurred in a virtual setting via WebEx. This is where the PCA goes over the specifications, the requirements. In this case, the Office of Equal Opportunity also has a representative at that meeting that again goes over those goal requirements, identifies possible areas for subcontracting opportunities and additional guides and support for those plan holders that are in attendance. And then in this case, there was also a site visit that was held. So there were a total of 4 addendum issued. And each of these either answered questions, included minutes, updates to specifications and plan, and then in this case, it also extended the bid due date. Next slide. We opened bids on December 3rd, again, virtually. The bid totals are read and recorded by procurement staff, and the bid summary is posted to QuestCDN. And then the evaluation process, as we've discussed, where we ensure the accuracy of the bid totals, we review the responsiveness of the bidders for the required documents. Once we determine that apparent low bidder, we hand over the MCUB forms and submittals to the Office of Equal Opportunity. Their review occurred over a 2-day period, and they were able to pass the apparent low bidder on December 4th. Next slide. That allows procurement to move into the request for the authorization. In this case, it was under the threshold, and so a business item wasn't created, and we went through our internal process. That internal process yielded a full approval by February 1st, and then post the approval was the process of the notice of award, the contract execution, the verification of all supporting documents. That includes sometimes payment and performance bonds, insurance limits, and then routing that document to the authority within the council for execution, and then most importantly, the notice to proceed. Next slide. So that concludes our presentation for today, and we would open it up to the chair and committee members for any questions or comments.
Great presentation, all of you. Really appreciate it. Any questions or comments from my fellow council members?
Chair Lindstrom, I just maybe
Yes,
have a question. So let me get my video on here. So I just was wondering, is like when if you had a MCUB, either a supplier or a subcontractor that maybe doesn't feel comfortable actually bidding on the project but supporting that project, is there someone on staff they could go to and say, hey, we're a business in Anoka, and then we'd qualify, then we think we could support you? I mean, is there any of that kind of thing where someone could go to someone on our Metropolitan Council team and allow that to happen, to say what their services are, so when it comes up they say, hey, we got some suppliers over here, or we have some subcontractors I think you might be able to support your project, or here's our list, that type of thing?
Kind of a matchmaker.
Mr. Chair, council members, yes, it's exactly a matchmaking opportunity. They can contact any one of us, anybody on my team, procurement. But what I will say is that that is something that we are currently doing. So if a small business is interested in either one, learning more about the council, or two, being able to provide the opportunity of giving the council more information about them, we will set up what we call a meet and greet with them, where we have a meeting one-on-one with them. We invite staff across the council that we feel would best fit their industry needs, just to have that conversation. So we can either do that, a formal meet and greet, or if they had just specific questions, about the programs or contracts, whatever the case may be, they definitely can reach out to any one of us.
Great, thank you very much.
One of the things that we regularly see is an engineering estimate, and I'm wondering if there are any hard and fast rules around if a bid is 10% off an engineer's estimate, then it's thrown out, or is it just on a case-by-case basis?
Mr. Chair, committee members, I can answer this question. So the engineer's estimate is, of course, really important. It's that independent estimate which gives everybody an idea if the prices are coming in at the price point we expect. But as you all know, because you're consumers as well, the prices have been not quite predictable, and there's a lot of public construction projects. And so we have prices coming, we have seen bids coming in a bit higher, but that 10% threshold of the engineer's estimate, we can go up to 10%, or we need to have some more information and conversation, and we may not need to go back and confirm that there's actually enough money in the budget to award. So it's really just a point to pause and look at the bids coming in and to make sure that they're reasonable and responsive and within our cost estimates.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Chair, this is
Yeah.
Wendy Wolf.
Please.
So obviously this whole process is set up to make things really, really fair so that everybody has an equal chance at being successful in a bid. But it has a lot of steps and a lot of people that have to touch paper or whatever to get through the process. Do we know how much that adds to the cost of a project on a typical project?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Wolf, I've, heard lots of different estimates depending on the complexity of the project. Some projects require more documentation and more preparation than others, depending on if it's funded through the Public Facilities Authority, the PFA. But I kind of heard the estimate that it's about 10%. It also depends on the bonds that sometimes are required or the different levels of insurance if it's around a railroad, but kind of a threshold of around 10% with preparing for the bid. And I would defer maybe to a project manager. And Mr. Wadeen may have some better estimates of how much it's costing the contractors to prepare it, but certainly there are a lot of steps and the intent is to be fair and equitable and transparent for all contractors.
That's not an insignificant number, no question about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and committee members, and I see in the chat, I should have deferred. Councilmember Zaron has some experience, and he said, looks like in the construction industry, bidding jobs is overhead, and overhead is about 10 to 15% of all the work done by the contractor.
Very good. Wendy, any follow-up on that question?
Nope, that was all I had. Thank you.
Okay, super. I have tuned in on YouTube to watch the bid openings. So I know I get it. Yeah, it shows me like the views are like 6 views. I'm one
Mr. Chair,
of them.
you have way too much time on your hands.
Exactly. And why YouTube suggests these videos. You may be interested in the bid opening of construction project. Like, man, I need to get a life. And I will tell you, they are boring. And that is a high compliment to all of you. These are things you do not want to be exciting, right? You want them to be as boring as possible. So yeah, if my council members are having a hard time sleeping, just fire up the old Quest CDN Met Council bid openings. So good job on keeping them boring. You would agree with me on that?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments from my fellow council members? Great presentation, really appreciate it. It's always good to brush up on these procurement steps. So really thankful for the work that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I know we're very excited to come and present some of this information to take you behind the curtain. This stuff is very exciting, but the less drama that we have as we work through those projects, the better for us as well. But thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to connect with some of the standard pillars that happen throughout the process.
And we see it right at the end, right? And so we just need to be cognizant that that a whole ton of work by a whole ton of people has taken place up to the point where we see it. All right. Thanks again. And that takes us to our general manager's report. Lisa.
Well, I'm going to add my thanks to our partners from procurement and OEO who do a lot of work to help us get to these contracts. And there's a lot of coordination, communication, and sometimes we struggle a bit because there's wrinkles that come up along the way, but we seem to find our way through anyway. So we appreciate those partnerships. And then I'm going to continue, Chair Lindstrom, with your theme of being boring, because I'm happy to report that it's been a fairly boring week, and that's good because I plan to spend some more time with family next week and take a week off and have vacation. So I hope it stays boring the rest of the week. I've got my fingers crossed. And the weather certainly is looking perfect for all of us to get out and get some fresh air tonight before it heats up again tomorrow. I'm complete and loving that the pandemic has turned a corner and we're not talking about some of the issues we've had to talk about a year ago. So a lot of gratitude for where we're at today.
No question about it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned. Have a great rest of the day.
Take care. Good meeting.